Hello everyone and welcome back to the TrevorReport. Let's jump right on into it. The Queen is, well, she died. I don't like talking about death on the TrevorReport or, well, in general. But the Queen, with all due respect, a moderating force on Britain. She stayed out of politics, unlike Meghan Markle's husband, and that's who he's been reduced to. Meghan Markle's husband. And if you follow me, I've talked about this before. I have a pretty substantial audience in the United Kingdom. Turns out I don't have like analytics or anything. I just kind of tell by the people engaging in my posts or whatever. And it's probably because my second biggest presence is on. Well, I've gained some followers on Rumble, but my second biggest presence is on Odyssey, and Odyssey's fairly big in the UK. So that might be why I have as big of a Northern European audience as I do, and I have tremendous respect for the royal family. In fact, the more I see the U.S. system being executed in all its glory, the more I find myself liking monarchies, because it's about turning a country into a family and governing it like a family instead of governing a government like a bureaucracy. It's neat. It's a neat way of going about things. It is definitely not an enlightenment way of going about things, and much respect for the Queen. I don't know what I'm supposed to say in this situation. Death is tragic, I suppose, and it is tragic regardless of status. But yeah, I thought I'd mention that 9/11 was yesterday. I wrote an op-ed about 9/11. But anyway, let's move on to the actual proper report. And it's the secret curriculum from Project Veritas. This, I don't want to say it has a soft spot in my heart, but it does. It certainly has a spot in my heart. Perhaps the spot in my heart that is filled with fire and fury and rage and brimstone and anger and hatred and malnourishment and discontent. You get the point I'm trying to make. But in part one of the secret curriculum, Greenwich CT assistant principal's hiring discrimination ensures subtle child indoctrination. You don't hire Catholics because they are more conservative. Progressive teachers are savvy about delivering a democratic message. Basically, they're a sort of a social version of Whig historiography. And what Whig historiography is, in a nutshell, is everything is progress. Everything in history is progress. Progress is good because it is progress. And if you disagree with that in any way whatsoever, if you call out that as a logical fallacy in any way whatsoever, then you're against progress and therefore evil. And they've taken the "you're against progress and therefore evil" thing as a means of this. It's not that society is a pendulum that swings one way or the other. No. Okay, all of civilization is nothing more than a skill tree in a video game. It just gets better over time, guys. It just gets better over time. And so, because if they believe themselves to be on the better side over time always, and people who disagree with them as they're the opposite of progress, and therefore they're bad because they view things in a very linear fashion, it's causing them to discriminate against people. And the Democrats discriminating against people for ideological reasons is the hallmark of the Democrat Party. Now, this one angered me a little bit when I first saw it, and it was because, well, yeah, this is my experience in high school, where the teachers would say something that is obviously political. Obviously political. I planned on doing this video on Friday, but for various reasons it didn't work out. But nevertheless, I just could not believe, because it's one thing for it to be in a decentralized manner of And it just sort of happens because that's the sort of class that these people are in. That's one thing. It sucks, it's terrible, but that's one thing. It is an entirely different thing to purposefully go out of your way to ensure that only people who think like you get hired. Now, this is definitely a violation of the law. They're specifically Connecticut section 46A-61B specifically bars discriminatory employment practices. A violation occurs if anyone refuses to hire or employ people because of an individual's race, color, religious creed, age, sex, gender identity, or expression. I would add politics on there, but yeah. So let's go through the exchange. I could go to the video, but I'd rather go to the exchange because this is a 4-part series, and part 4 hasn't been released yet as of the time I'm recording this, which is on Sunday. This video goes out on Monday. You know the drill. You're teaching them how to think. That's it. It doesn't matter what they think about. If they think about it in a logical, progressive way, that becomes their habit. If you were being logical, you would think like me. This is so absurd. I hate the arrogance of this so much. It is so unbelievably arrogant. If you were a rational actor, you would just agree with me. I used to do this too, back before, my balls dropped. But nevertheless, and then the Project Veritas journalist says, so you kind of gear them to think in a more liberal way. Liberal, of course, in the American context, being synonymous with being a socialist. If you want to know actual liberalism in the United States, it's called constitutional republicanism. And it's not this, incidentally. Boland. Believe it or not, the open-minded, more progressive teachers are actually more savvy about delivering a democratic message without really ever having to mention politics. This was my experience. And I was in California, not Connecticut. But what happened was, my teachers would say something that is an obviously political statement. I'd point out that it was an obviously political statement and that you're wasting time. You're wasting my time and you're wasting everyone else's time. Plus, you're wrong. They would tell me that I'm just being a bigoted conservative or whatever nonsense, and I just kind of chalked it up to because I was young, I was a fool. I kind of just chalked it up to, well, they're being an idiot, and I came off as the smart one, so none of the children will be convinced. These are the same, my fellow peers, as it were, the same fellow peers of mine who wound up believing the lies from the corporate press. My actions did nothing, absolutely nothing. Back then, I was just discriminated against for no reason. I did nothing back then. I'll admit it, absolutely nothing back then. But I'm doing something now. Anyway, the conservative one who is stuck in her ways, I'll never be able to fire her, and I'll never be able to change her. So I make an impact with the next teacher I hire. So my instinct for hiring, I've hired maybe 4 or 5 people. They're pretty good. So that's where I make my impact. So it's subtle. They will never say, oh, this is a liberal or a democratic way of doing things. They'll just say that the norm. They'll just make that the norm. And this is how we handle things. It's subtle. And that's how you get away with it. That's how you get away with it. And how do you make sure the parents don't find out? They can find out. They can find out so long as you never mention the politics of it. Okay, so someone sides with the parent, then what? You let them explain, and then you move on to the next question. But then eventually, what is the outcome of that? They don't get the job. Boland. I'm not a huge expert on religion, but Protestants in this area are probably the most liberal, but if they're Catholic, conservative. Oh, so then what do you do with the Catholics? If you found out someone is Catholic, what then? You don't hire them. So would you ever hire a Catholic then? No, I don't want to. Because if someone is raised hardcore Catholic, it's like they're brainwashed. You can never change their mindset. So when you ask them to consider something new, like a new opportunity, or you have to think about this differently, they're stuck, just rigid. Why would someone have to think about it differently? Why? If someone believes themselves to be correct on matters of opinion, then why would you telling them they should think differently, why would that matter? Well, it matters if you're the sort of socialite version of a Wake historian, where everything is everything is progress. Everything is progress for progress' sake, and if you don't side with what I side with, you're against progress and therefore evil, because progress is good, and you know that it's good because it's progress. This is the level of intellect that anyone who is against the supremacy of reason has to deal with. And Boland here is just a midwit. He is a midwit operating in this small circle, this small sphere of life where no one's allowed to disagree with him, and he has the institutional power to enforce no one being able to disagree with him. In the next one, let's move on. The Secret Curriculum Part 2. Prestigious NYC private school director touts sneaking her political agenda into classrooms, disrupt wherever I can. I felt like a double agent. Huge contingent of white boys are just horrible. And because we have other segments to get into, I'll just move on to the TLDR of this one. The TLDR of this one is that this teacher right here, Jennifer Norris, would go out of her way to discriminate against her own students for political and ideological reasons. She continued to do this over and over and over again, and this is what she has to say about white people, because she's evil, because she's an intersectionalist, incidentally. Unfortunately, it's the white boys who feel very entitled to express their opposite opinions and just push back. There's a huge contingent of them that are just horrible, and you're like, are you always going to be horrible, or are you just going to be horrible right now? Don't know. I think they need to go. I think they're really awful people. They're so protected by capitalism, it makes me sad. This is what you would call a racial socialist, an intersectionalist, okay? And I went over intersectionalism, specifically Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined intersectionalism, on a premium podcast that I did, Wokeness as Secular Catholicism. I had it with some guests. Become a member on theacropolisnews.com and check it out. It is the origins of critical race theory discrimination, essentially, or the origins of their justification for it through the intersectional lens. She is a woman, therefore she's oppressed by the white supremacist, the term white, the capitalist with capitalism, patriarchy. And so when she goes out of her way to discriminate against her fellow students for having the incorrect skin color and the incorrect gender, she's like, oh man, they're just so entitled to express their opinions. They don't think that they're born wrong, guys. I can't believe these Jews are disagree with the Nazi regime, guys. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, part 3. NYC assistant principal becomes second school official to reveal discriminatory hiring practices, child indoctrination strategy. If candidates answer diversity, equity, inclusion question incorrectly, they are an automatic not hire. I'm going to phrase diversity, equity, inclusion as DIE or die because. But anyway, Todd Soper, grade K through 4 assistant principal, neighborhood charter schools. By the way, again, The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, DIE, DIE, it is a black nationalist dog whistle that is created through a critical race theory framework. You do not have diversity, equity, inclusion as it's with its political connotations without critical race theory. Okay, you simply do not. And critical race theory is black nationalism. This is black nationalism in schools. If teachers don't answer a black nationalist dog whistle correctly, they will not be hired. Okay, this is why I don't care about the Klan and the Charlottesville riots or whatever. This is why it is of no interest to me. The white supremacists have zero institutional power in the world, or for that matter, any power in the world, anywhere in the world. The black nationalists are fucking everywhere. They are everywhere. They do not care who they discriminate against. They don't care how young, how old. Okay? The only thing they care about is there are some people that are born correct and some people who are born incorrect. And if you fall into the category of being born incorrect, i.e. white male, then you don't deserve to be treated fairly in society because according to the black nationalist dog whistle, you're the beneficiary of all this nonsense. And so he goes on, a teacher don't want to teach Black Lives Matter ideology to her students and left the school. She would have probably been fired eventually just based off of mindset, but yeah, she left. We have always and will continue to embrace diversity on all levels. So in other words, what you might say in the original German of this National Socialism, you might call it, say, hypothetically speaking, I don't know, diversity über allen. Diversity above all. But anyway, so the same way we embrace identities that are based off of ethnicity, skin tone, and gender, we also embrace orientation. Like for kindergarten, for Pride Month, we got every kid a mirror, and we talked about a read aloud about an animal or a boy that said he wanted to be a mermaid. It's a way to start like you should never be whoever you feel like you should be. That's the kind of message of the read aloud. It's delicate, right? So in kindergarten and first grade, they are 5 and 6 years old. But I think we start with the umbrella theme of embrace who you are, and you have to love who you are, and each part of you is beautiful, whatever you feel. As kids get older, the idea of gender becomes more salient, which happens more and more towards the 4th grade. The conversations deepen as kids get older. Gender, the way it is understood now, was created by Kinsey and John Money. These men were pedophiles who abused children and all sorts of evil, disgusting, degenerate nonsense. And that's the origins of the term gender. They coined it, and it could be categorically dismissed on those grounds because it was evil experiments on children. Kinsey outright measured the orgasms of babies. You can read between the lines on that one. But anyway, there's also the latest one that's going to come out. They haven't come out with an article yet, but she's clearly the next one. And she goes, and there's this Carolina state representative where she says, quote, you have to, she said in regards to white people, quote, treat them like shit because it's the only way they will respect you. That's not respect, that's fear, but whatever, fine. And all of this nonsense in just South Carolina alone, I experienced it in California. This nonsense is everywhere. And what people should do is they should get people to ban this all across the board. Okay? In January, check this out. In January, Connecticut State Representative Kimberly I'm not going to bother pronouncing that last name, and other legislators proposed legislation to the Connecticut State General Assembly which would have made political indoctrination in schools illegal. It was shut down. quote, no curriculum adopted by the State Board of Education shall include the teaching of biased political ideology to students. I think political affiliation should be added to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I'm not kidding. It is okay if we're going to accept the premise that the state can create rights out of fiat, then it should at least create rights out of fiat that align with the Constitution. Okay? Because that's what Roe v. Wade did. It created the right to an abortion out of fiat. Okay? I think we should get 2/3 of the House and the Senate to ratify the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include political affiliation as a protected category that you cannot discriminate against. Simple as. Simple as. Also make social media companies and classify them as utilities so they are obligated to follow the First Amendment. But anyway, let's continue with the next segment. Court rules Biden admin must hand over documents regarding social media collusion. The Biden administration went to Silicon Valley and said, please censor this Fauci parody account. Please do this. And they did a bunch of other things, but that's sort of the funny one. And there is a collusion of state and corporate power in order to ensure that nothing is outside of and against the state in the Biden administration, which you'd call, fascism. But anyway, Steve Bannon. The FBI conducted 35 raids targeting Trump supporters. That's according to him. You could watch the video if you want. It wouldn't surprise me. The Biden administration is trying to ensure that no one is outside of or against the state. So, yeah. But here's something I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that we no longer have a neocon, neolib uniparty between the Democrats and Republicans. I hope we have the Republican Party becomes properly Lockean, populist, etc., and it becomes, Republican. The Republican Party is at the stage where it's taking itself away. It is separating itself from the neocon, neolib uniparty, and that's what all these Trump endorsements are. And I hope the uniparty just becomes the Democrat Party, and we can finally have some kind of opposition, some kind of substantial and authoritative opposition to the uniparty. I am looking forward to this. I hope it works out. I hope it pans out that way, and we see evidence in this in the way that Mike Pence is defending the raid against Mar-a-Lago, the former vice president. Okay, keep in mind, if they wanted to target Mike Pence, and they being the neocon neolib uniparty, and the FBI being the paramilitary wing of the neocon neolib uniparty within the United States, if they wanted to go after Mike Pence, they could do so just as easily. He was, the vice president to Donald Trump. And no one in the Republican Party really likes him anyway. So if he's going to be like this, why not become a Democrat? Okay, Liz Cheney was straight up asking Democrats. Okay, she lost her primary election. I'm very excited for that. All previous reports linked down below in the description. But she was asking Democrats to vote in the Republican primary so that she could stay in office. That's what we're doing. Okay, the neocon neolib uniparty in maybe the next 10 years or so will just be the Democrat Party. And it will be the Democrat Party versus something else. We'll actually have a two-party system instead of a one-party system, which, again, ideally a multi-party system of maybe consisting of 5 parties. But that's kind of wishful thinking, and I'd rather just work within the bounds of what's currently possible. So, and what I just talked about is within the realm of possibility. So yeah. And then the Democrat Party, if it takes in the neocons, which, by the way, the line between neoliberalism and neoconservatism is so thin it doesn't exist. But anyway, abhorrent and anti-democratic. Outrage as DNC panel blocks vote on dark money ban. This is from Progressive Party USA. There's a small portion. Read the original article here. The Democrat Party by not allowing the resolution to come to the floor is complicit in the railroading of democracy itself, said former Ohio State Representative Nina Turner. A Democrat National Committee panel on Thursday refused to allow a vote on a resolution aimed at banning dark money from the party's primary process, a decision that sparked outrage from progressive DNC members and others who backed the proposal. Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, a DNC member who faced an onslaught of dark money during her recent campaigns for a U.S. House seat, told Common Dreams that, quote, "It's really a sad state of affairs for the DNC Resolutions Committee to, quote, not bring this to the floor so that the members of the DNC can weigh in." And maybe the progressives in the Democrat Party could kick out the neocons and the neolibs. That'd be pretty cool too. You know? And then we can finally just have actual opposing forces, a push and a pull in American politics. That'd be so well. I'm gonna end this on a low note because well, it's a Monday, and if you're watching a news thing on a Monday, you're asking to be sad. So yeah. Anyway, this is from Andres Segovia's Locals. I highly recommend people check out his Locals. He has a lot of stuff on there. He posted a clip on his Instagram of a child named Ezekiel Kelly, and Ezekiel Kelly went around targeting people for having the incorrect skin color and just started shooting them. He went on a huge shooting spree. He went in store after store after store, just shooting white people because they had the audacity of being born wrong. And a couple days ago, this is incredibly gross, but a mother, I'm not going to scroll down because this article shows the photo of the decapitation victim. But in this photo, a man decapitates a woman in broad daylight in the middle of town, and no one tries to stop him. No one tries to do anything. It's very gross. It's very gross. And I'm just going to leave it at that. In the meantime, my name is Trevor Brown, and you just watched the TrevorReport. Do click the link tree down below in the description that I was forced to make because Linktree banned my Linktree. So I made my new one, and it's down below in the description. All of you brilliant viewers out there, my name is Trevor Brown. I am the editor-in-chief of Acropolis News Network because I can give myself whatever name and title I want because I own it. You could go to theacropolisnews.com, or you could go to This Just Trevor on whatever Liberty platform is your choice. You know, except for the ones I'm not on because I haven't seen them pretty much.
Acropolis News. News from the Acropolis.